In this problem, in this video, I'm going to do page 65, number 4 in Krugman and Wells. So in this problem, they are giving us a couple of points that a couple of slopes that correspond to points moving from left to right. And they tell us that they're giving us they're trying to get us to understand this curve using the point method. It says, it gives us these slopes, and it says measured by the point method. What that means is that the slopes that correspond to the points are tangent to those points. So if I say to you, the slope is 0, which is just a horizontal line, well, if I'm trying to get you to draw a curve using points that are associated with that slope, using the point method, it means that those points are just touching that that line in one spot. Okay, so that's what it means, and we'll get a better idea as we go through. So let's consider the three slopes that they give us. They say negative 0.3, negative 0.8, and then negative 2.5. Okay, so I know that a slope of 0 is a completely horizontal line. So this is a slope of 0. So now let me think about what a slope of negative 0.3 might look like. And this is just, my best approximation. So I'm going to say that it's pretty close to 0, but it's going to be, it is negative, so it is going to be declining from left to right, but, not by much. It is close to 0. So that's going to be my first slope. And then I'm going to say, all right, well, if that's negative 0.3, then negative 0.8 is getting a bit more steep, more negative. You can think about yourself at the gym and think about yourself on a treadmill. And, the treadmill can go, you can do an incline or a decline on the treadmill. So in this case, in either way, if you're going, a higher incline or a lower decline, either way it's getting harder to do. And so that's what's happening here. I mean, if you think about it, we're just on a decline on the treadmill. It's getting a little bit harder to do. So if that was our first decline, then, maybe 0.8 is a little bit more more of a decline. I'm trying to draw here. So maybe just a bit more. And then negative 2.5 is kind of, that's a big jump from negative 0.8. So here we have these three slopes, and what we have is that the points associated with these slopes sit right underneath them. Well, if I just, now looking at this, what I think I might see is that what we probably have is this situation. So we have, these are not all next to each other. Remember, it is a curve. So maybe we have this is what makes sense. A little bit more of a decline, and then more. Whoop. And then more. I'm just kind of matching that. And then underneath we have these points. And then we combine them or join them to think about the curve that they represent or that they illustrate. And that looks like a curve that would make sense. We first have a slope of negative 0.3, then one of negative 0.8, and then negative 2.5. And then in terms of, creating a sentence that might describe the relationship illustrated, you might say something like, this curve is one of the things we could say that this is a negative increasing curve. Remember, when we talk about negative slopes, we're actually talking about the absolute value of these slopes. And the absolute value is just means that we take a negative number and make it positive. So, our slopes, in terms of thinking about whether they increase or decrease, we'd say not negative 0.3, but 0.3, and then 0.8, which is higher, and then 2.5, which is higher than that. The way, just for your own information, the way we write this means absolute value, these two straight bars. And when we take the negative value of a number and then do the absolute value, we just get its positive value. So if I did this, if I did the absolute value of -2, I get 2. The absolute value of -5 is just 5. So that's where we get this increasing from. We're thinking about the absolute value of these negative numbers. And it's negative because all of these slopes are negative. Okay, so you could just say that the curve is negative increasing. The slopes are getting steeper. And there would be a number of sentences that could be accurate. I'm happy to check what you've put down to make sure that it's correct. And now let's try doing part B. So in this problem, so this is 4B. So in this problem, they tell us that they're giving us, it looks like 5 points. So we have a slope of 1.5. And we're still using the point method. So there's giving us the slope of a line tangent to a point on a curve. So we have 1.5, 0.5, 0, 0, negative 0.5, and negative 1.5. So right away, one of the things I'm going to notice is that there's a maximum here at this with these slopes because we go from a positive value to 0 to a negative value. So somewhere between these 2 points, there is definitely a maximum. So that's already giving me a little clue about what this curve might look like. But let's just continue with the method that we used before. In the method we used before, and I think the best way to start this is to say, okay, well, what does the slope of 0 look like? Slope of 0 we know is a flat horizontal line. So now let's sort of branch out. Well, then if the slope of 0 is just a flat line, then what is the slope of 0.5? Well, it's a little bit steeper in a positive direction. And then we can consider, okay, well then what's 1.5? Well then 1.5 would be more steeper than that. And then we might say, okay, well what about -5? Well, -5 would be more steeper but in the opposite direction. And then -1.5 would be more steeper than -0.5, but it has the same sort of steepness as 1.5 but in the opposite direction. Well, now I'm really starting to get a sense of what this picture might look like. I mean, I have these, this is using the point method, so these slopes are tangent to a point on this curve. And I know that a maximum has happened right here. So I think it would make sense to say this is what's happening. I mean, we're moving from left to right. So we have 1.5, then 0.5, then 0, then -0.5, and then -1.5. So if I just join these points, what do I get? Looks like I just have a parabola. Whoop, that does not look like a parabola. Forget about that. Okay. Okay, so that looks like it's a parabola. In any case, this is what my curve might look like. And there's a number of things you could have said about this that, would make sense. You could say that maybe from a slope of 1.5 to 0, the curve is, so this is in this region, is positive, decreasing. The slopes are getting less and less. And then maybe in this region on the right, you have that they are negative, increasing. It's getting more and more and more steep, but the slopes are negative. So that's one thing you could have said. You could have said that the slopes change from positive to negative. You could have said there's a maximum. So there's a number of things you could have said, but all of those are correct.